Okay, so in this video I want to demonstrate the concept behind the H1-H2 transfer. So this is where we take a master hologram, the H1, and then create a second hologram. This is the transfer hologram, or the H2 hologram. Now, what I'm going to start off with first is just a simple reflection hologram. In fact, this is not even a transfer hologram just yet. This is just to demonstrate the use of an overhead mirror, which is instrumental in getting the correct viewing angle for the master hologram. So I have an overhead mirror here, and as you can see, this is going to create a simple reflection hologram, a Denis-Shook hologram to be more specific. So with that in mind, we can then see how well this turns out. I have a spatial filter in place, and after that, it then directs the beam to this overhead mirror, and this is what allows the viewing angle to be appropriate for the final hologram. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this has turned out to be. So here is the result. So you can see the hologram here, and this is when it is illuminated with laser light. So we have a good high contrast, very nice result here. Now, this particular object is not all that interesting because it does not have a whole lot of depth to it for a hologram, but I do think it is somewhat useful in the sense that the large text on it, the high contrast, serves a useful purpose in that when it comes time to project the H1, the master hologram, onto the H2 plate, we can see the when we have achieved focus. In other words, once we have the proper distance between the two plates. So it can be somewhat useful in that respect. So I tend to think of this as an object for sort of a calibration purpose. So later on, once I've done this, I'll switch over to a somewhat more interesting object with depth to it. So now that we've seen this illuminated with laser light, I'm next going to see what it looks like just with ordinary ambient lighting and also with a cell phone flashlight. I find that the flashlight on the phone, when you use that, it can also bring out additional detail better than just ambient ceiling light would do. So this is with flashlight from the cell phone. So I'm holding up the film here with a black background to help with the contrast. And again, it looks pretty good. So you can see all the detail here. And in fact, you can see the optical table at the base. And anyway, once I get focus on it, you can see it better. So again, this is just the simple reflection hologram, just as a starting point using the overhead mirror. So now that we've seen this, I'm now going to start experimenting with the actual creation of the H1 master hologram. So that means setting it up as a transmission hologram. So as you can see, I've now moved the object in such a way that it is illuminated in front of the plate rather than behind the plate. And I have also set up another illumination source from the side. So this is basically a transmission hologram. So that is the H1 master hologram, and you can see it here now with the object having been removed. So what we're looking at is this is viewing the hologram just through the plate here. And again, this is what it's going to be, the H1 master. So we'll use this to then create the H2 hologram. So after we have created the H1 master hologram, we then need to configure the setup for creating the transfer hologram. So one way to do this is we can actually move the overhead mirror onto the table and then rotate the H1 hologram onto its side. And this allows us to illuminate it from the correct angle. So again, this is just one way to do it. But once we've done this, then we can proceed to finalize the setup for the transfer hologram. Now, in order to create the H2 hologram, we have to take the H1 plate, which is currently on its side, and flip it around. And this is what is then going to provide what is called a pseudoscopic image. So we go from this orientation and then we flip it over, and then you can see what this looks like here. So it looks like the text is greatly magnified, and what this allows us to do is to project this onto the H2 plate. So to see this more clearly, I can take an index card and illuminate that index card with the projected image from the H1 plate. So here is an index card, and you can see as I adjust the distance from the H1 plate, you can see the object become more or less out of focus. So that's a pretty good way to determine where you might want to position the H2 plate, is where the details start to become sharp, the details that you want to see. So again, this particular object does not have very much in the way of change in depth, so it's just a flat front, but this nevertheless serves as a starting point to creating these types of holograms. So once I've determined where I want to position the H2 plate, then I go ahead and start the exposure. So here is the exposure here. So I have removed the overhead mirror, and instead I now have the mirror on the table, and this allows us to basically again have the H1 plate rotated and flipped in such a way that we can have the appropriate viewing angle. So it's essentially the plate is on its side and flipped. So here is the result here. So as you can see, this is not particularly bright. It's rather dim compared to the simple reflection hologram I created earlier. And I suspect that this is just a result of the transfer process where the H2 plate has to be some distance away from the master hologram. Now you can see here when I illuminate it with the cell phone flashlight, it is a little bit brighter, but still not as bright as the simple reflection hologram that I showed earlier. So here again, this is that simple reflection hologram from earlier. It's a lot brighter and a lot sharper. So again, I think when most people do these transfer holograms, either they are using a more sensitive material, or they are working with smaller plates, or some other factor that is going on there. But I will experiment a bit further to see if I can improve the brightness of the transfer hologram. But in the meantime, you can see that it's a lot easier to create a simple reflection hologram, and they turn out a lot brighter, at least in this example. So next on the list, in the next video, I'll show how to create a rainbow hologram and see what that looks like. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.